Welcome to Full Discourse. I'm Josh Elkin. This is a podcast where we talk about food media and the people who are involved in it. Today, I have a very special guest, Inga Lam. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Honestly, I really appreciate it. In this episode, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. We're going to talk about Buzzfeed and Tasty. That's part of your history. And honestly, just like all things internet and working for a large company and what that was, what that is, and your experiences. And honestly, my experiences too, because I've gone through some similar things. In this episode, we'll be talking about the origins of Buzzfeed Tasty and knowing as a creative when it's time to walk away. Buzzfeed was not and is not the only internet media company to make it big enough that its own staff become household names. And what were the hard lessons learned from the people who hopped on early in the game and signed contracts without really knowing what the future holds?
Technically, I'm still on contract.
Really?
Yes. It's just like so now I'm on talent contract instead of like being a video producer. I'm on talent contract, and I think I just resigned for this year. But it's more like for brand partnerships, and if they need me to do anything representing Tasty and something. So I think I still have a year to go.
I didn't know you were still under contract. That's so fascinating. Do you still do anything for them, or?
Last year, for example, I did like a bunch of brand partnerships with them. So I worked with different brands. I went to like an activation where I represented sort of the brand a little bit. Yeah, but I don't do like shows with them anymore. Okay. So editorially, no, it's more on the marketing end.
So let's go into a little bit about who you are and how you got started, and give me like a brief little history so the audience could know.
Hello, I'm Inga. My background is I was with Buzzfeed for I think like around almost 6 years. I joined Buzzfeed 2017. Prior to Buzzfeed, I was actually at Food Beast, which we connected a little bit about, which is crazy to me. But Food Beast is kind of where I started the whole food and video journey. And that was something I was very excited about. And when I joined Buzzfeed later on in the year, I actually wanted to join Tasty, but I was denied and rejected. And
they weren't the same at that point?
No, they're not. Oh. So like, well, okay, Tasty is under Buzzfeed,
right?
But Tasty is like a different department. So Tasty is pure like food videos only, and at that time, Tasty was mostly doing top-down videos, like recipe videos. Buzzfeed was more doing, like the Buzzfeed like narrative, like fun, identity-based content. Yeah. Well, editorially and then video-wise. But when I joined Buzzfeed in New York, that's when they were starting to really develop their video team. So that's kind of where I was for the next 5 to 6 years, just doing, I think all kinds of content, food content mainly, of course, but I think a lot of it was also culturally based, identity focused, and just like, I think a lot of the food content I did was more like what's going on behind the food, more like story based versus like
cooking.
Yeah, versus like, this is how you make X recipe, but more like, let's go visit the chef and have him, or like, ramen chef reviews instant ramen. It's kind of like that kind of fun food video type situation.
Did you do cooking?
The whole like me being on camera doing food situation kind of came out of necessity because I started as a fellow, and at Buzzfeed, what that meant at that time was you kind of go through rotation. So I did editorial, I did social, and then I finally moved into video. And then I did I think 1 or 2 videos where I wasn't on camera that much, and most I did like a little vlog introducing like I think one of the ones was I had people try gourmet ramen. And then I did a little vlog like, hi, I'm Inga from Hong Kong. This is what I grew up with. I want people to try ramen, blah, blah, blah. But I think then one of the videos, more ambitious videos I want to do was I was trying to find somebody to come into the office to make Dragon Beards candy, which is this like, do you know what Dragon Beards?
Like pulled, right?
Yeah, the hand-pulled cotton candy. Sure. So I was like going around New York. I went to Flushing, all that, trying to find like a master Dragon Beard candy maker. Could not find one. And so I was like, oh no, what do I do? And I think I talked to my team and they were like, can you do it? I was like, I guess I can try. And then, so I tried to do it, filmed the entire process, lots of error. And then I made it. And then that video blew up, like it went viral. And so I think, with how data driven things are, basically my team, my manager was like, it worked. Do you want to keep doing this? And I was like, I guess so. Like, if you think it's a good idea, and I enjoyed it. And so I feel like that's kind of what kickstarted me being in front of camera, making food. And I think at that time, there wasn't as much content that's like showing you the entire process of the, both of the, it's like not just like a perfect rendition of how it's going to go, right? It's like I screwed up and I succeeded. It's like a whole adventure. So that kind of became, I guess, my thing.
Was it you on camera or was it like a top-down situation?
So it's like a 3-camera setup, right? Yeah.
Wide, top, tight. I know what I'm talking about. What I think about Tasty is like they created the top-down style, which is so funny because it's back. Like people are doing it, like I'm doing it again,
Yeah.
Did you have interest in like being talent, like being on-screen talent, or was that not really, that was kind of an afterthought before you went viral?
I think it was definitely an afterthought. I never thought that I would be on camera that much. So it's kind of interesting how things played out. I think I was always more interested. I love video editing. And so, I mean, that's kind of how I joined Food Beast, like as an editor. And
so funny, by the way, like I want to edit.
I know.
That's so like,
so yeah, I was like, oh, I'm like perfectly fine editing and shooting. But then I even like remember the first time they asked me to do a vlog to introduce my video. There's like I have like probably like 50 takes of just like a 10-second clip. Because I felt so awkward. I was like, I was not made to do this.
I always found that it's just not a natural thing to be on camera. You have to, it's a skill. Like you have to learn it and you have to practice it. It makes sense that you took so many takes to like do that. And then like most things online, especially in the earlier days, you keep it going until you run out. Like if it goes viral, you're doing it again until it stops. So what was your next video after that?
I don't remember exactly what the next one was, but I remember one of the other ones I did was like impossibly cute bento box. So I was doing this bento box situation, and that one also did pretty well. So
You know Jess Wu? She's the bento box girl.
Oh,
bento box mom.
Yes. That I know. Yeah.
It sounds like you were a pioneer in that sense, especially like the beginnings of Tasty and Buzzfeed. What did you want to like? You just wanted a video edit before getting into that? Is that like your whole thing?
I majored in psychology, but I always wanted to do film. So I was going to transfer out to do film, but I did not do that because I was like, I was on scholarship, blah, blah, blah. I was
Where'd
like,
you go to school?
Idaho. I was just going to Idaho. Yeah, I know.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's so random.
My school had like 1,000 students. It's kind of pretty insane. But I mean, I appreciate the time. I think because I was in such a small school, I was able to do a lot of cool things. So that's kind of where my I guess the filming, the shooting, the editing background kind of came out. I was working for a marketing department on their YouTube channel. And then I did a lot of film internships, I think, in other places. So that's kind of where I was like, oh, wow, I really enjoy this editing process, just like creating something out of, I wouldn't say creating something out of nothing, but, it's like you have all these clips and you have the ability to make it into something so interesting beyond just the clips by themselves. So yeah, I think I was just like, I would like to be in this space. And going back to BuzzFeed, I was like an avid consumer of BuzzFeed videos. And I was like, this is so cool. I want to be a part of this journey. And if my editing skills can play a part into that, I would love that.
Don't you find that like editing and knowing how to put a story together helps you when you're like the actual talent? You know what I'm saying? Like I'm bad at that. But when I cook something, most of my videos, 99% of my videos are like a recipe. But it's not just a recipe. Like you have to captivate the audience. You have to like build the story of what you're making and how you're making it and like, rope them in. And as I edit more and as I do that, it helps me like envision how I'm going to film it, what I'm going to say, etc. So you find that like being an editor first, doing all those film schooling stuff and education helped you because now you do on-screen stuff all the time, right? Like do you edit your own videos?
I do edit my own videos, and I'm like, I need to like have somebody help me because I can't edit all these videos myself. But like what you said, I think when I film, I know already kind of how I'm gonna edit it. So it's like I feel like there's just so much control in being able to know that and like not filming too much, not filming too little. It's like, okay, once I do like a take, I'm like, how's that going to look like in the final product? And so that definitely helped me. It still helps me a lot. Kind of knowing how that's going to go.
First of all, I remember now the dragon beard candy thing and everyone did it after that.
Did they?
Like recreated that. Like I've seen people redo that over and
Oh
over
yeah,
and
now
over again.
it's like very viral.
Yeah, for sure. Like, was it after that video that you're like, okay, I could be talent, or did it take a couple videos to like get to that?
I think it was probably when I started entertaining the possibility of being talent, but I still wasn't sure that it was like a full gig type of situation.
Did they encourage you?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's the nature of being at a media company like BuzzFeed. I feel like if they have, and a lot of times when you do casting, you actually just cast your own employees, like your own coworkers. And even for me as a producer, when I'm casting people, I'm like, you have star potential. I would like to feature you more. And so I feel like that's kind of how I guess my team felt about me. They were like, oh, we think you're good on camera. You should do it more. And I was like, I guess so. It just saves us having to find more people. So again, I feel like really was born out of necessity.
Are you making movies? Like, what do you like? What's the bulk of your content?
What I'm doing now is still very similar. It's just like food. But so very recently, I did like a video where I made food from Avatar: The Last Airbender for 24 hours. So it's
for 24 hours.
Yeah. So it's basically 4 different kinds of meals, and each meal was inspired by a different nation. But it was kind of like doing a lot of research into like what are the dishes that are best representative of each nation, yada yada, and also just delving into the process of making them and understanding them. And so I feel like that's kind of like an extension of my work at BuzzFeed, where the pop culture bit, of course, but also just kind of the what's the word? Experimental nature of it a little bit.
That's the fun part, though.
Yeah,
no?
yeah. That's what I love.
Yeah, there's a lot of creativity there. You have to like kind of figure out what to do. Like Babish does that with his stuff. Do you remember Feast of Fiction, Jimmy Wong? Do you remember that?
I remember.
He did that as well.
Yes.
There's such a creativity to that, because you have to interpret what it is, right?
Yeah. You interpret. Well, I think for that one was a little different. I think they have like an official recipe cookbook.
Oh, okay.
I actually got to talk to the cookbook author a little bit too. So I think it's kind of like the nerding out about food in general, and also I really like taking it very seriously and making it look exactly like it does in the animation.
Right.
So kind of combining that a little bit. Yeah.
That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about cooking is, and I talk about it with Jeff all the time, like this is the idea in my head. Mm-hmm. We'll see if it actually works, because like I don't test things really.
Right.
I just go for it. And I converse about that with even other buddies of mine who are like real chefs. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? And I like say these words, mm-hmm. and they're like, I don't get it. Like, and then I do it, and they're like, in my mind, it wasn't that. And
I
then
see.
Right. So I always say that, like, what people ask me often, like, what style of food you make? And I'm like, it's going to sound a little douchey, but like, it's an expression of art through food,
Okay.
Because I want it to look this way, and I make it look this way, and I create it based on like the art in my head.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's the muscle that like you're explaining it with making like anime food or like fictional food, right? Like,
I think I get what you're saying. I think my interpretation of how I say what food means to me is like, it's my way of, it's like art, right? I mean, it's what you're saying. It's like, this is my way of being creative. Right. And being creative could mean a lot of things in this case, but yeah, I get it.
Okay, so you went to college for psychology, transitioned into film love. You didn't actually work in film, did you? Okay, but you got the bug.
Yes.
And you wanted to start doing it, hence hitting up Food Beast and asking to edit. So funny, by the way. And the food content creation world is so small. Mm-hmm. It's so big, but it's also so small. Yeah. You always know someone. Yeah. And then you worked for a big company like BuzzFeed, and ultimately left to do your own thing. I also did that. I worked for Epic Mealtime. We were like with the pioneers of food creation on the internet. And it wasn't a big company, but it was a big IP. Like, it was a big brand.
So Epic Mealtime is the reason I put sugar on my bacon.
Yeah, let's go. Candy bacon.
Yes.
It makes me feel so cool to like have been there at the beginning and now still kind of doing it. and meeting people like you and a lot of other people in this industry, especially with this new wave of like short form content creators. And everyone always like asks me about stories. And that was the actual inception of this podcast. I was hanging out with like a bunch of like TikTokers, and it came up that I was doing Epic Mealtime, and they're all younger. Right. I'm a little older, and they're like, "Oh my god, my older brother or sister used to watch that," you know. And but they remember it, and then they asked me questions about it, and wanted to hear stories about it. And then I realized, oh, this is like an interesting topic to talk about the history of the internet and food media and where it was and where it is and where it's going through the people who were there doing it. So that's how this happened. And so I went through the same thing. I worked for Epic Mealtime. I was the principal food person. I created all the meals, really created 90% of the ideas too. And then, you know, for working for a big brand, things kind of got messy. I was under a shitty contract, wasn't making any money, you know, and then realized like, okay, look, if I really love this and I want to make it happen for myself, then I got to like move on and like try it out on my own. Is that a similar kind of experience that you had at your company?
I think yes. And I don't know if you're going to share can you share your
My truth?
Yeah, your truth?
Listen, it's all okay if you just say you're sharing your truth. No, it's no secret that I was disgruntled there, that I left in the way that I did. And, you know, we're talking about 9 years ago. I've been on my own for 9 years. That is double the amount of time that I was at Epic Mealtime. So even though like it was a cool thing that I started out doing and it got me my start, I've gone way beyond that. And I don't mind talking about like why I left and the hardships that I felt. And there was great times, but a lot of it was shit, you know? And I don't mind talking about that. So if you have any like burning desired questions, I got you.
I think for me, it's more interesting to see where I was when I first started versus where I was when I left. And let me know if you feel any of these same sentiments. But obviously when I joined BuzzFeed, right, I was super excited. It was like my dream job. Like it was literally my dream job. I was like, I finally got into the company that I've been dreaming of being the entire time I was in college. So I think I brought in like I was extremely motivated. I was like, I had ideas popping out like everywhere. I was like, yes, I will give you as much as you want. I like worked extra hours, you know, like, and I was like, that's totally fine because I am here to, I don't know, just bask in this creativity.
Was it your like kind of your first real job after college?
Yes.
Also, there's a lot of allure there.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
An emotion.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I know, you know, BuzzFeed does have this, I think what Diane, you were saying, you know, the company culture was really good in terms of like, we always say that even if you ask, I feel like you could ask anybody who worked at BuzzFeed, but we were there for the people. Like, it's amazing being a part of a collective of just like creatives that think like you know? And so I think there was a lot of inspiration there. But I think it's more like, you know, over the years, especially when you kind of see other people's trajectory, right? Like you start learning a little bit more. I always say like, as you grow older, you become more jaded. That is true, you know, but you become jaded in the sense of like, you learn more about the world. You learn more about your worth. You learn more about the things you could do beyond, you know, the restrictions of, let's say, a corporate company. Which I think when you first start, you're just like, I'm just happy to be here. Yeah. Versus towards the end, you're like, what if I could be something more? And so I think when I left, it kind of was a little bit more of that mentality of, I felt like I had given as much as I could. And I just felt like there was no more growth for me at the company. You know, as much as I wanted there to be, I just think it was a time where I became frustrated with, you know, a lot of different things. It could be going back to it. I think I was most frustrated that I couldn't grow anymore. I just felt like I was giving, but not absorbing anymore. And that was the biggest thing for me. I'm somebody who I always say I need to be motivated intrinsically. Does that make sense? Like extrinsically, of course, like, yes, we want like the rewards and the promotions and all this stuff. But also if I'm not learning anymore, I feel like it really sucks the soul out of me a little bit.
Like it's kind of becomes mundane.
Yes.
Like, what are you doing it for if you're not educating yourself and enriching your knowledge, right?
And then on the other hand, there's also that side of you, like, what if I was on my own? Like, are there all these other opportunities that I could pursue that would give me that sort of satisfaction.
So just to stop you right there, I felt the exact same way. It got to a point where, and let me know if this is how you felt. It got to a point where like you just felt like an employee instead of actually growing and like being something. And after, getting, I don't want to say like you get a viral video and then all of a sudden you're like, fuck them, I could do it on my own. Like, it's not like that. It's more like what you're saying. You have all these ideas, you go into it with all this energy, and then like slowly but surely the energy gets sucked out of you. And then what are you doing? You're just like punching in and punching out. And there's no like excitement there, right?
Yeah.
And for me, when I realized I had a defining moment where I was, and it was when I looked at the owners and this is crazy. We were watching a Lily Singh documentary at VidCon. Okay. It was like it was the trailer for her documentary, Superwoman. And in the documentary, and this is literally like I can play it back in my head. She says something along the lines of, "Don't let any other individual determine your happiness. Like you should determine what makes you happy." And I looked to the left, to one owner, and he was smiling at me. And I looked at the other owner, and he was smiling at me. And in that second, I decided I was going to leave. Obviously, I had to work up to it. I didn't like it wasn't then that I quit, but I worked up to it. I had to determine, and I don't know if you went through this either, but you have to like kind of like play it in your head. Like, can I do this on my own? Is this a bad idea if I step out of it? Is it a risk? Sure. But you don't know if that risk is going to pay off unless you do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So is that what you kind of felt too? Like,
yes.
Did you determine that?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly what those moments were for me and kind of how that thought process went. My defining moment was during the pandemic. Okay. Which makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think because during the pandemic, during quarantine, all this stuff, a big part of the joy of being at the company was being near these people. The quarantine part took all of that out, and you're literally just signing on to you're just on camera talking to people, and then you're going back to your little room and just cranking out videos. Like it really felt like I'm just in a production. I'm just part of the production line. Yeah. Even if they didn't want you to feel that way, it felt like that way. And then, the burnout comes and all that stuff. And you kind of just start, like, I kind of just start questioning, okay, should I be doing something more with my life? Is this really where I want to be in the next year? And so I think I started having these discussions, and I remember kind of talking to my peers about it. And I think I talked to like some of my mentors about it. And then I feel like at that point, I actually thought about quitting. But I brought this up to the company, and I think we had some conversations about like, how do we sort of navigate around this, And I think the peace offering, if you will, was we started a new channel, a new brand under the company. Okay. And that kind of satisfied the itch for a while. Yeah. But ultimately it is still, right, the company. Yeah. You're still, but I think at that point, that was good enough for me because I was just like, I just need something new. Like I like being here. I feel like I learned a lot from here. I'm grateful. I just need something more. And so they gave me that something more, but it's like putting a bandage over a wound, right?
Yeah. And a really big open wound. And maybe you don't know it at the time, but it's there.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's what it was, where I think after 2 years of jumping on that new project, I found myself feeling that way again. It was just like, I can't scratch this itch. It's just going to be here forever. And so I think that's when I was like, okay, I've had 2 years to think this through. I think it is the time. And so,
yeah. It's like when resentment sets in anything, it's very hard to pull that back.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And that's what it sounds like. And it sounds like they kind of like tried to, like you said, band-aid it with like, here's another opportunity, like dangling it in front of you. Same thing happened with me. We had our show where we were making dumb stuff. And then I had this moment where this is early. This is like 2013. I left in 2015. This is like 2012-ish, 2013. And I came up with this idea. I said, I am the cooking person. Our show is not cooking. It's food parody, right? We were making large things, whatever. And I was like, why don't we do like an instructional cooking show where it's like step by step. We're not making things the size of this table. We're making more manageable things that anyone could do. And they weren't having it. And then I was about to start it with someone else. And they were like, well, you can't do both. You got to choose.
What?
And I was like, well, I'm not going to like walk away from this big thing. So then they're like, yeah, okay, well, we'll just do it on our own now with you. And you could be the host of it. And that was their Band-Aid.
I see.
But at that point, the resentment already set in,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So I completely relate with that, you know? But again, so it took you 2 years contemplating.
Essentially, yes.
While doing this new thing. What was the new channel?
The new channel is About to Eat.
About to Eat.
Yeah. And I don't regret it. Some people sometimes ask me like, do you regret kind of just, and I was like, no, because I think, especially for that first year, I was working with some incredible people, incredibly talented people that I've always wanted to work with. And we did a lot of really cool stuff, but it's just like, you know, I think once the honeymoon phase is over, it's just kind of back to square one a little bit.
You end up back at the beginning of where you started thinking like that.
Yeah.
But worse, in my opinion.
I think it's also because my role in this new channel was a little bit different. So to your point of like, you were like the host, for example, right? Or you were kind of the driving force behind it. I think one of the people who I was like, I wanted to step up to be like the lead of the channel. I wanted to like take on more responsibilities beyond just producing, and so kind of understanding the business side of things, talking to like, and then I realized I was like, whoo, that is like a lot in a very different way. And I think I learned a lot of things about how those kind of decisions can play into the creative. And I realized that the restrictions that were in place were a lot firmer than I thought they were going to be.
What do you mean by that? Restrictions?
I think it's more like towards the end, there were a lot of things that we wanted to do that we could no longer do because of executive decisions from like the corporate end. Like it literally,
politics.
Yes, it literally was like, because you're in a corporate company, this is not going to happen.
Right. You can't make your own decisions. There's red tape.
Yes, because you are still like a small part of a much larger company. And I understand that. But just because I understand it doesn't mean I won't be frustrated.
Or have to.
Yeah.
Right? Which I get.
Yeah.
I was like that too. Like I had a mortgage at the time. I was an adult. Like I had and I couldn't even pay my mortgage. And we were the #1 YouTube channel in the world.
That is crazy. What kind of ironclad contract?
It was bad.
Oh no.
It was really bad.
I'm sorry.
I was making less than a teacher in Canada, which is really bad. No offense to teachers in Canada. But like and not only that, but we sold a lot of like merchandise and there was a lot of like side gigs and blah, blah, blah. And I signed a bum contract that like basically turned me into like a slave for the company. Oh my God. Yeah. Like there's a story I have, like I sent my contract to my uncle, who's like an insurance lawyer, doesn't know anything about entertainment law, but I couldn't afford to pay real lawyers. So I just like, read this, tell me if there's anything like nefarious. And my uncle literally turns to me and he goes, or he calls me back and he's like, if you sign this contract, don't ever ask me for legal advice again. He's like, they want you to be like their like butler. And I was like, yeah, but like internet, we're famous. I'm meeting famous people. Like everyone knows us. We're getting millions of views a day. He's like, it's fine. Just don't ever ask me for legal advice again. And I was like, thanks, Unc. But he was right. And it was, they offered me a 4% raise after 4 years of working like all the time. Yeah, it was bad. And then I saw the light. I literally said I told the guys at the company, I was like, look, I'm motivated by money. Because I didn't realize how much I loved the creativity at the time, because I was so jaded and I was so like, I don't know what the word, but like I was jaded. I couldn't see past like the money at that time. The company was making all sorts of money and we were not making anything, and I was just like resentful, And I told them, I was like, look, I'm actively seeking other opportunities because you guys can't give me what I want, and that's fine. I'll still do this, but like I'm also going to look for other things. And then I got the opportunity to host a television show for Food Network and Cooking Channel. This is in 2015. And I got the deal. I lied to them one time to like, I said I had a doctor's appointment. I went to go meet the producers,
Oh my God,
like, yeah. And all that stuff. And I got the job. And then when I told them about that, they were like, what do you mean? You got a television show without us? And I was like, yeah, I'm going to host this show, like on Cooking Channel. Like, I got to take a month off, leave of absence. And they were so butthurt about it. The owners, not because like I got an opportunity and they should be grateful that I got an opportunity, but because I was going to be paid a decent wage to do something really cool and they didn't have control over it. I'm saying that because was that like a thing at BuzzFeed? Like did they like block you from like opportunities? Did you ever have opportunities come through where like someone wanted to pay you to like do something that was outside of BuzzFeed? And it was that important at the time, like what to make your decision to leave? Like were you seeing like bottom line deals coming through and you're like, I can do this. I can get that money.
So at BuzzFeed, right, I was hired as a producer. So I get paid like the producer wage, the salary. And then on top of that, we also signed like a separate creator contract because at that time they had started their creator program. So the creator program is where they kind of like pitch you to brands. And then if you're on an ad or something, they pay you another fee.
Right.
And then outside of that, if you have any like sort of brands approaching you, you have to ask for permission. Like, I don't know, like a random brand is like, I'm not going through BuzzFeed. I'm just going to you. Hey, can you like do this thing for us? And so it's for that part, you need approval.
Wait, is it like a first right to refuse type of thing? Like they can be like, no, it has to go through us.
They kind of evaluate whether you can do it or not. So, okay, I think it's more helpful if I just specifically say what happened.
Okay.
So for example, I had this deal come through that approached me directly. And what they were offering me was essentially half of my annual salary.
Okay.
And I was like, hey, can I do this? You know, like to the company. And I think after much evaluation, they said no, because it was something about like, I think they approached the company. The company was like, you have to go through us, but they didn't. They were just approaching me directly. I don't really know what happened, but basically.
You're making half your salary in one deal.
Exactly.
That's the point.
It was the first time in my life that I was like, oh my God, like this is what life outside looks like.
Yeah.
Like that's crazy. And I was like, I was obviously super bummed, but I was, I think at that time, and I think that kind of planted the seed of, ooh, like I could do this on my own. Why am I doing it here? And I think but I honestly think that was probably one of the only times they said no.
Yeah, but it sounds like it was the only one that mattered.
It was like, I've never seen anything like that. Yeah, so it was like a pretty big deal.
Was that like the nail in the coffin?
No, it was not the nail in the coffin. It was what do you call it? It's like the first
nail?
The first nail.
The first of many? Was it like a trend? Like was it a domino effect? Because for me, it was a domino effect. Like once one thing happened, it was just like over and over again. And by the way, that job that I got that summer was 4 times my salary in 1 month, which is not even that much because I wasn't really making that much. So like, that's the point, you know?
God.
But I came back from that month off and the next day I quit.
I mean, I feel like that makes a lot of sense.
It was like, but then I saw, like, just like you, like I saw the light. There were deals coming in, and it wasn't that they were like these tremendous deals that were 4 times my salary. That was a very specific thing. But if I was making $1,000 a month, and in a month I got like 2 brand deals that were worth, I don't know, 10,000, then that's 10 times my salary, like to do what I loved doing for myself. Right? So I get that. I get like, because then you look back and you're like, well, what else did I miss out on? Like they're giving you like that thing that's half your salary. You're like, well, what other, like you're saying, like you saw, like there's life outside this, right? So continue down the journey. Like what made you like, what were the things? I mean, I guess you still kind of work with them. Yeah.
Yeah, I still do. And so that's the thing. I think if anything, this is where I feel like maybe the paths are a little different, where I think because they knew, I think they had a feeling after they said no to that I was going to have some opinions on this relationship, you know? And so I think after that, they were very mindful of that, you know, in the future, when I send stuff through, they were a lot more allowing. It's also because how, you know, it's very convoluted because I was paid on two separate roles, right? The creator role and the producer role. And I think one of the things that I was very frustrated about was when they were saying, when I wanted a promotion, because I was like, I am doing way more than my role right now, like as a video producer. I was like, why am I not like the next level? You know, I've been leading this thing, I'm founding this thing. And I think they essentially were like, well, you're already compensated from your creator role financially wise.
They're like, we're not going to pay you. We're not going to double you up if you're already making what you would have made it otherwise. And it's like, nah, you're doing both things.
Yes.
It's two jobs.
Yes. And I remember saying this, I was like, I don't think that's fair. You know, I would like to be compensated for my actual role, you know, and everything else I do, that's extra work. And I appreciate the extra work, but I would like it to be separated, and I would like to be acknowledged for my efforts on this end, you know. And I think that was something, it's very matter of principle for me. Like, you know, I was like, I would gladly do the work, but I need you to value me for what I'm doing here, and not just think that, oh, because I'm doing this and this, that it's okay because the numbers on paper add up and make sense, you know.
That's taking advantage of you, and that's not cool. And I like, good for you for standing up for that, because it takes a lot to do that. Like, I was exactly the same way. I was always outspoken for what's fair and what isn't. And I was one of the first people to like leave, and everyone at the company resented me for that. And then slowly but surely, everyone just knocked off one by one, and then came back and was like, you were right, you know? So I completely relate to that. And again, just good for you for saying something, because most people wouldn't.
And I think it's also just culturally, in my culture, like it's very hard for me to say stuff like that. You know, I think so. You can imagine that it definitely took a lot of thinking on my end. Like I definitely did not have this conversation until like I had like 1 to 2 years of thinking about it. You know, I was like, it Yeah,
like, hey, what's up?
I do not have that sort of courage. But now I'm like, once you do it once, after you do it once, I think you realize how important that is. And I know a lot of people right now are advocating for stuff like that. And I think that is very important. You know, you should definitely, if your company's not already like telling you your worth, you need to be the one to be like, hello, hi, you know, I'm here.
But it's easy these days, especially with like short form and all these different like social media platforms. People think that like just because they get a viral video that they're owed something or whatever it is, and then like other people, then the vultures come. You know,
it's a whole other rabbit hole, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely is. Do you ever stop feeling grateful for like the position you're in, like being able to create videos on your own and being able to be an entertainer and essentially be your own boss? Like, does that wear off for you? Like, are you grateful for the work that you do and the job that you have?
No, I am very grateful. I think I'm also like the type of person who's like, everything happens for a reason. Like, you know, I think this whole journey, I'm grateful for everything that happened, and I'm grateful to the company. You know, I genuinely think that, like, look, it didn't take like until that first video where I was on camera to like be where I am today. I didn't even think this was a possibility for me, you know. But going back to, I think, what we were saying about that feeling when you start versus when you end, I think I am somebody who is, and I'm sure you feel this the same way too, right? I think I am very grateful for all the opportunities that I've been given, and I'm still grateful for the company. I just don't think what I am now today would be here if it wasn't for them. However, that was something I struggled with a lot towards the end, right? And so because of that, I think I struggled a lot with like finding that fine line between being grateful, but also being valued for what I was worth. You know, I say like, I'm not owed anything, but I do feel like I was no longer, like, sometimes I did feel like, am I really being appreciated for what I am giving you? You know, I don't think I'm asking for a lot. You know, I don't want a lot of things. I would just like, for example, I think back then I was like, I would just like a promotion. That is all. I literally was like, I don't even need the salary. I just give me the title. Like, because I feel like I deserve that. So yeah, I think that was something that it took a long time for me to kind of reach that conclusion of like, okay, I think you can be both. you can be grateful for what you have, but still be able to ask for the attention you deserve. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. What I was referring to really was when the allure wears off, like when you, like, for example, do you ever get recognized on the street?
Yes.
I mean, I always thought it was a cool feeling. Now it's like a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
Now it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, I've worked a lot. You've had a lot of people view you, see your stuff and all that stuff. Like, has that worn off? Has that like feeling worn off? Has the fact that you went viral, you get views, like, has that changed from being this cool thing that like you're lucky for to, no, it's the job. Like, we're in the job now.
I really appreciate my community. I think they're very gentle with me. I think they're very accommodating when it comes to me, which I think is very rare in this internet space that we're in. And I think a lot of times when they recognize me, they kind of tell me how much they appreciate watching my content, which I think actually motivates me to create more. I think it helps me actually keep sight of why I'm doing what I'm doing, if anything.
So it almost not re-energizes. It keeps you energized. Yeah,
is sort of I think that is the right word. But I think working for yourself, there's a lot of things that you have to think about, right? Like, you have to create your own office space, you have to create your own schedule. Like, sometimes you get caught up in the numbers and you're just like, oh my God, like, this is so much, and I think you can stress yourself out. And I think that is the part of where I am right now. I've been independent going on 2 years, only 2 years. You've been doing it for way longer than I have, but I find myself having to consider a lot more things, and sometimes it gets really exhausting. Do I miss the monotonous routine of the 9 to 5 in sporadic moments? Yeah, like very briefly for like 2 seconds. I think
it's easier,
yes,
right?
it's easier, but I'm definitely happier now in terms of, like, I always say the highs are higher now. The lows are also lower now, but that's just part of being your own business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Working for yourself, especially in the creative field, because you're not like an accountant where like there's zero creativity. You're just looking at numbers all day. You actually have to create and keep creating and run a business and all the things that come with that, right? Not to mention, in our business, stay on top of trends, evolve, adapt. I always say adapt or die, evolve or dissolve. You can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? And expect different results. But I'm exactly the same way. Like, I've never worked harder in my life. Even when I was working 12 hours a day at Epic Meal Time, like, it's different when you work for somebody else. When you work for yourself, you're not just putting in the hours when you're like hands-on. You're constantly thinking about it. And I don't care what business, any business that you own, that's what you should do. You should think about it all the time, right? For me, it's sometimes even hard to balance like work-life balance in our space. Is that something that you ever like deal with?
Especially in our space, because you are the brand.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's not even like, oh, I have like a clothing line or whatever. No, it's like, I am the brand. And so everything you do is part of that business. Everything that your actions could instantly affect, how people perceive your business. So yes, I think, I know there's a lot of people talking about this now too, because there's so many creators, but you go from a 9 to 5 to a 24/7. That is very true, because there is not a moment. It almost feels like not a moment can go wasted. I actually had this conversation with the Korean Englishman when we were filming the burger video, because I had told them that, I just left like last year, and I was like, it almost feels like every minute you have could be an opportunity to, I don't know, make profits, to make an asset, to grow. And then when you're not doing it, it feels like you're wasting time and you're and it's just like this crazy insanity, right? This circle of sanity in your head. So yes, I think that is something that I struggle with. I feel like a lot of business owners struggle with.
Well, content creation for sure. Everyone I know struggles with that. Like, what, I gotta post. But also, on the flip side of that, you could post a video here and get however many views, and then you wake up in the morning and it's like, whoa, this went viral. And that's where the work-life balance comes in our space. Like, you really got to break, and you really got to like set it aside and kind of like not care as much. It's hard. It's really hard, but it's really essential. And I think a lot of younger creators are like falling victim to that, you know, even older creators. Like I've been doing this. This is my 14th year doing this. There's dips, you know, you bob and weave, you like come in and out of the waves and stuff like that. And if you like it and you are successful, you can keep doing it. Is there anything you want to say to my audience? Where can they find you? What are you working on next before we wrap up?
I am actually still mostly on YouTube. I know short form is where it's at, and I'm on, Instagram, TikTok, all that, but long form has always been my space. It's where the video editing comes in. It's more fun.
Longer,
more
tedious,
but more fun.
Yeah.
And
also more lucrative, just saying.
If you do it right,
Yeah.
yes. But I'm trying to think of what to do next for my next 24-hour video. It's also like what I used to do a lot at Buzzfeed, but I got really exhausted. It literally like hurts my back because I'm getting old. But yeah, I've been trying to do more pop culture stuff because that's really interesting to me. I don't know if this is the same audience, but Bridgerton's coming out, and I was like, ooh, it'd be cool to do like a Bridgerton era food.
That'd be so cool.
Right? It'd be sick.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm planning.
Like some high tea stuff.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Make it
I love that concept, by the way.
You do?
Amazing
Okay.
concept.
Thank you.
Are you doing it all in one video? Like 24 hours? It's all one. How long is the video? 20 minutes?
Yeah, usually like 20. It's been getting longer.
Yeah,
like
you
30.
definitely love editing. I struggle to edit a 1 minute video.
No, you don't. I love geeking out. Like for the Avatar, the Last Airbender video, I literally was like looking at all the different cultures, and then I was like, okay, let's do a little B-roll sequence for each of them. We're going to incorporate the ambiance. So like Air Nation will have wind sounds, and then
that's sick.
I love
it's that detail.
Yeah,
it's honestly that detail and that attention to detail that sets apart a regular bullshit video to a good video. I know, I just to go back for a second, I had to learn editing and filming after Epic Mealtime because all I was caring about was the food. That was a journey. And I'm still on that journey. So hearing you talk about that almost inspires me.
I'm glad.
For real. Yeah. Your YouTube channel is your name, youtube.com/Inga Lam. What about your other socials?
My other socials are Inga TY Lam. TY is my middle initials. People are like, thank you. No, Inga TY Lam. Yes.
Instagram, TikTok,
Twitter,
X, whatever. It's Twitter forever for me. Thank you so much for coming on the pod. I had a really good time getting to know you and hearing your story. Yeah, maybe we'll cook together one day.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Cool.
Thank you for having me again.
Full Discourse is a podcast hosted by me, Josh Elkin, produced by Diane Kang, Melissa D. Mons, and Diamond M Print Productions. Camera operator Jeff Liu, post-production sound by Coco Lawrence, production assistance by Melanie D. Watson, and music by me.